to Timeless with Julie Hartman Live. It is Wednesday, March 20th, 2024. I'm Julie Hartman. We've got Sean McConnell in the dungeon. Hello, Seanzy. How you doing? You really do love the music. I'm thrilled that you love it. Sometimes I think about changing it. You know, I'd be curious if those of you in the chat, and I know we already have Darrell in the chat.
That's enough exercise for today.
I want to know what people think about the music. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you care? Do you not care? Ben Shapiro sometimes references his music. He has that guitar riff, which he literally apparently like made up. And I think it was like Jeremy Boring's brother's garage or something. It was totally on the fly, that guitar riff that he made. This was not on the fly. This was very carefully thought out, this music, but let me know what you think about it. Great to be with you. You can call into the show at 1-844-861-5537, 844-861-5537. Today, we are going to be discussing Worldwide Happiness Day. Today, March 20th, is, according to the United Nations, Worldwide Happiness Day, but the United States isn't so happy, especially compared to how happy we were in the past, at least according to these rankings. We'll briefly be discussing kind of trends of conservatism. Interestingly, in different parts of the world, we're seeing more individuals, at least now as it stands, seeming to dabble in conservative curiosity, as I call it. Then the bulk of the show, we will be discussing Yuri Bezmenov's 4 steps for ideological subversion. Yuri Bezmenov was a member of the KGB in the Soviet Union, and then he defected to Canada in, I believe, 1980. And he outlined these 4 steps of the Soviet Union's plan to ideologically undermine us. You will not believe how eerie it is. It is absolutely crazy how much of it has come true and how successful they've been. Yes, Shanzi.
I think the correct terminology is operative.
Operative, KGB. Yeah, we were thinking about that yesterday. KGB member. It sounds weird.
Somebody
operative.
Said it in the chat.
Yeah, thank you
for that. I don't remember who it was, but
thank you,
thanks,
chat people. Yes, and you're keeping it classy, as I can see. I have a direct line to the chat, and I'm seeing people are liking the music. Well, that's a relief. One thing off of my to-do list. Don't have to reconsider the music. But yes, we'll be talking about Yuri Bezmenov. And then finally, I want to discuss tattoos. I've been doing a lot of reading on tattoo trends in the United States. Just, you know, I love these fun, random topics. When did tattoos become popular? Who liked them the most? You know, during a time in American history, it was really a trend more among the working class, and the upper class socioeconomically kind of scorned tattoos. And now it's pretty common. So if you have a tattoo, or if you don't have a tattoo, and you like your tattoo or don't like your tattoo, like your bare skin or don't like your bare skin, call in. I really want to know, because I don't have tattoos, why people like them. Yes.
I got really excited for a second there. I thought you were talking about the little guy on Fantasy Island. The plane, boss.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I know.
I can't even feign that I know what you're talking about.
I have hope that one person got that joke.
Well, we will be able to see. Yes. But seriously, I'd be so curious if people call in. I don't have tattoos myself. A lot of my friends do. I think they look amazing on my friends. I don't think I'm cool enough to have tattoos. I don't know if they would work so well on me, but I want to hear your thoughts, your arguments either way. So again, 844-861-5537, 844-861-5537. We can put it in the chat, or perhaps it's in the description, the call-in number, so I don't have to keep repeating it. Or you can use the chat, and I'll read aloud some of your comments with the chat.
Speaking of the chat.
Yes.
A couple people got my joke. Also, they think that your intro music is ABBA, but it is a remix of ABBA. It's Dua Lipa.
It's Dua Lipa and ABBA.
Just to be clear.
I discovered that remix in college, and I really liked it. And then when we were figuring out the show music, I just thought, I'll pick that. But I'm thrilled you guys like it. So just quickly, one of the things that I love about this show and about Dennis and Julie is that I really get to, in real time, explore ideas and revelations that I have. And this is very important to me to do on this show because, we live in a world now where people don't have freedom to explore ideas or to even change and modify their opinions on ideas. It's kind of weird to me. We live in this country where someone will say something and we take it as their affirmative, unchanging, permanent opinion on that subject matter. Or even when someone slips up and says something that's a bit not so great for them. We take it as a total indictment of their character and revealing everything about that person that you need to know. And trust me, I know better than anyone, being a host, that when you speak, you have to stand by your words. Before you open your mouth, you got to know when you say something, it is going to stick with you and people can quote you. But I also think it's very important to be able to modify and explore and change ideas because then otherwise, how do you learn? How many people go into a conversation knowing exactly what they believe on that subject? We have to give people freedom to evolve. So this week, as many of you know, one of the things that we've been discussing on the show, and I've really been obsessed with, is this idea of selective outrage, where I've been doing so much reading on the destitute situation in Haiti. It's been overrun by gang violence. You can watch my show on Monday where I go through the whole timeline, the 2010 earthquake, the Clinton Foundation's involvement, et cetera, et cetera. But I've been so obsessed with, here we have Haiti, which has descended into the most barbaric violence you could ever imagine. By many reports, there's cannibalism going on right now in Haiti. And yet, our collective national attention, if I may make a generalization, especially among those who are woke, especially among the mainstream media, our collective national attention is very much zeroed in on what's going on in Gaza. And listen, I understand why our national attention is zeroed in on what's going on in Gaza. There's a war there, obviously. We the United States are aiding Israel in their war in Gaza, so I get it. But if we're looking at this idea of outrage, right? People are very obsessed with Gaza. There was this demonstration, if you can even call it that, at the San Francisco airport where they blocked the entrance to the airport. There was a sit-in at the San Francisco airport protesting the alleged, what they say is a genocide going on in Gaza. Someone recently self-immolated in front of the Israeli embassy. And so there's all of this attention, right, on Gaza. But then again, we have cannibalism, gang violence in Haiti. And people are kind of like, whatever. Generally, not everybody, of course, but collectively, we're kind of shrugging our shoulders. So I always try to ask, why is that? And this week, I think I've been kind of toying with that idea. I've been kind of evolving and pushing that explanation forward. And I think for the third day, and luckily this is the final live day, so I can't talk about it tomorrow, even if I want to, but I feel like I've finally really come to it. And of course, I want to know your thoughts. I'm seeing the chat is really active. I'm so delighted. I also see some shout outs to Sean in the chat. Questionable if he's deserving of those shout outs. No, I'm kidding. Someone saying Larry Elder seems to speak pretty much perfectly. Yeah, that's so true, Richard. Larry, the first time he, has an idea, he says it perfectly, but he's also been at this for, several decades. But I am going to, yes, thank you, Sean. Sean just said in my ear, should tell you guys that I'm having him on the show next week to talk about his book on California. So he's going to be live right here. You can use the chat, ask him questions. We can read them. So thank you. Yeah, stay tuned for that. But
no problem. I think you're onto something good. Like, life has become so binary, so on, off, so black, white. There's no nuance. There's no grace.
Right.
Like, and I think that came from the left. Where they just shut you down, shout you down.
It totally came from the left.
Attack your person rather than your argument. And then I think on the right, we've started to kind of behave like that as well.
We have.
And so we've got these sides. And I just appreciate that you're trying to refine your point, and I can't wait to hear it.
Well, I'll say this. Some people say to me, like, Julie, how do how are you doing this job at 24 years old where you get online and you say your opinions? What if your opinions change? Or what if you say something, and I don't think I've ever said anything wrong with this Haiti thing. I just think I've gotten closer to a good argument on this Haiti thing. But people will say to me, like, why do you subject yourself to this? And aren't you putting yourself in a bad situation if you say something that maybe you later evolve on? And my response to them is, I don't subscribe to this idea that like everything that you say has to be your permanent, unchanging opinion. We have to get to a place in society where we give people, some grace and take them on the intellectual journey with you. But here's what I've really come to on this Haiti situation and the selective outrage. First of all, as I have argued, it is totally because of this white versus non-white complex that exists among leftists. They are very determined to pick a situation and show how a white country or person is oppressing a non-white country or person. And we don't just see this globally, we see this domestically, where 97% of Black homicide victims are killed by other Black people. But collectively, we kind of shrug our shoulders at that. Many people don't care, for instance, about inner city Black on Black crime. But when a white person kills a Black person, national headlines, outrage, media attention, etc. So that is definitely what's going on as far as the selective outrage, with focusing all of our attention on Gaza and then shrugging our shoulders about what's going on in Haiti. But here's another component to this. And it is what the left tells you to be outraged about. And the left is very much focusing on Israel, Gaza, in large part, I believe, because they see a way to leverage it to further this white versus non-white, narrative. But, let's look kind of more globally at conflicts that we've been outraged about. We can see that it's quite inconsistent. For instance, Putin invaded Ukraine in 2022, and we saw all of these Ukraine flags, all of these demonstrations in support of Ukraine. But then 10 years ago, when Putin invaded Crimea and parts of the Donbass, I don't know, I was 14 years old. Did anybody really care? I don't remember any kind of comparable outrage. It was the same act, invading Ukraine, but just the second time around in 2022, the left was more sort of instructing people to have outrage about it. And that's why I think it was ignored in 2014. So it's just something that I think we ought to consider. That if we really try to be the moral titans that we think we are and we hope to be, we ought to care about bad actions equally. We ought to care about violence equally, because all Black lives matter. All lives matter, regardless of who the perpetrator is. I just said Black lives because, Haiti, obviously there's Black on Black conflict, but we shouldn't just selectively care when the left tells us to care and when it can be spun for a political narrative. There's so much violence, so much destruction all around the world. And I think it's kind of gross that we shrug our shoulders at those things when we don't see an immediate political spin that can be derived from them. So that is my affirmative thought. No, I'm kidding. Always room to evolve, but
I only have 3 syllables to add.
Yeah.
I
knew it.
Q.
I know. People are writing. They knew that you were going to say that. Oh, wow. People are already getting started on tattoos. You guys just wait when we have that big discussion. Stay tuned for it. So, as I said, today is World Happiness Day. And in fact, this is not just like one of these holidays that some random person came up with. Like every day is like a taco day or an elephant day. Have you ever noticed that? People just kind of come up with these random holidays. This was actually created by the United Nations General Assembly a few decades ago, World Happiness Day on March 20th, because according to the United Nations, world happiness is something we should all endeavor to have as a part of human existence. Yeah, agreed. So yearly, for about 12 years now, yearly there has been this World Happiness Report that has been published where they take polls and, collect other data from various countries around the world, and they rank the countries in terms of happiness. And so interestingly, this year, for the World Happiness Report in 2024, It is the first time in those 12 years that this report has started that the United States is no longer in the top 20 happiest countries. This year, we're number 23. Last year, we were number 15. So we've really gone down several points from last year. Also, when this report first started, we were in the top 10. So we've gone from being in the top 10 to the top 20 to now not even in the top 20. So there's a lot to say about this, but what I also find interesting is, well, what are the happiest countries? Or who? No, it is what are the happiest countries, not who are the happiest.
I have a question.
Yeah?
How do they measure happiness? I actually stumbled across this article this morning on my own.
Really?
And I also thought it was neat, maybe you're going to talk about this, that people over 60 are happy in this country.
Yes.
People under 30 are not so happy.
Yes, and that's changed. What this report says is that it used to be the case that, at least in the United States and other Western countries, young people were pretty happy. Then once you hit middle age, that kind of dipped down a bit, and then it recovered. And now they say that it's actually kind of shifted, where young people are overwhelmingly not happy. And to your point, Sean, it's those who are older who are happy, which is definitely something.
So how do they measure it?
Well, truthfully, I'm not sure. I didn't look very deeply at this report and the data. I think a lot of it is.
I'll try to find it.
Oh, you have it? Oh, you're going to try to find it. My understanding is that they take a lot of polls. A lot of this is self-diagnosed happiness. They ask you, are you content with your life? Are you content with your career? Et cetera. But you can look that up. But I'm interested who or what countries are the highest on the happiness scale. So this year, I'll just read to you the top 5. Finland, Denmark, Iceland, Sweden. That's not shocking because all we do is hear about how happy those countries are and how much better they are compared to the United States. Interesting what number 5 is. Israel. Now that one really surprised me. Actually, I shouldn't say that. See, this is another example of evolving in real time. It both really surprised me and really didn't surprise me, to be honest. It surprised me that Israel's number 5 for the 2024 World Happiness Report in the wake of October 7th. Now, they could have taken data from the past year, and obviously some of that data predates October 7th, 2023. But still, for the 2024 World Happiness Report, Israel's number 5. But, yes, Sean, did you find the data?
I did find it. I also see Scandinavia is running away with happiness. It must be the yodeling.
That's it. Yep, you got it.
So the rankings are based on self-assessments by people in more than 140 countries in which they rate their life on scale from 0 to 10, with the best possible life for them as a 10. Among the predictors of people's happiness are not just economic well-being, the report says, but also factors including freedom, life expectancy, and social support. Interesting.
Okay. Yeah, so honestly, sometimes when I hear those, I'm like, what does that even mean? By the way, I'm seeing comments. The United Nations, my fave, with a oi emoji. Yeah, I know, the United Nations. If it weren't so depressing, it would be comical, the United Nations. But back to Israel being number 5 in happiness, where the United States is number 23. As I said, this surprised me because of October 7th, obviously, and the tragic, nature of things there since then. But it actually didn't quite surprise me because when I went to Israel 2 years ago, right now I was in Israel, I was so amazed by the vitality and the spirit of Israelis. It really hit me when I was there. And because we met so many Israelis, we had Israeli tour guides, we go out to the clubs at night, we go out to restaurants, and at least I would talk with so many of them. And I was so blown away by their patriotism, by their love of country, by their vitality. at dinner, when you cheers, they go l'chaim, to life. Like there was just this love of life and vitality. They also had a remarkable ability to discuss very sad things, very political things, you know. But it was so cool because we'd be having this intense, sad conversation. I remember one with an IDF soldier whose father died in the 6-Day War, and then we would move on to a like drinking together and having fun. And I realized, please cut in.
No, I confirm what you're saying. When I was
you went there,
I had the same assessment. It was like that. And I don't know about you, but before I went there, I was worried. You know, is it safe to go there? But you get there and you realize all the people are so connected. Like they were texting each other faster than news traveled. Like they were all connected, and if there was an attack somewhere, they all knew about it before the authorities did. And it was not that, I mean, that could be something that would really ruin your happiness, but there was a love of life and a love of country, and the people were so warm and inviting. It was really different from what I anticipated.
It's totally different. It is, and I think a large reason for it is that Israelis know what life is, you know? I mean, they're obligated to serve in the army, with the exception, of course, of the Orthodox, putting that aside. You know, most of them are obligated to serve in the army. They have daily threats to their existence, obviously, especially now. And I think everybody in Israel has had a family member or a friend die in some attack or some war. And I think their situation, which is unfortunately very sad, also in turn gives them a kind of understanding and appreciation of life that we in America in recent years have lacked because we luxuriate in prosperity and security.
To add one thing, I think there's an intensity that we don't have. There's a real intensity. And just a funny story, I was on a tour bus, and in front of the bus, there were two guys, and they got up in each other's faces, and they were like screaming at each other. And I turned to our bus driver and said, "Is everything okay?" And he said, "Yeah." He just asked him what time it was.
No, but I would see things like that. It's so true. Like, I was so amazed by the way that Israelis would debate with one another at the dinner table. Like, they would get loud. They wouldn't get personal, but they would get like, "Come on, are you crazy? You really think that? What are you talking about? You know that's insane." But then at the end, they'd hug it out and they'd be fine. And here in the United States, we have a similar intensity. We have a similar calling the other side crazy, but we take it personally. They don't take it personally. You know, they understand that it's a conversation, it's a good argument, and they're trying to get to the truth of things, and that it shouldn't be seen as an ad hominem attack. But anyway, I think that's really worthy of note, that sometimes, like here in the United States, obviously we have many and ever-growing problems with homelessness and crime and fentanyl and all of those things. But really, over the past 20 to 30 years, we have luxuriated in prosperity, affluence, and security, certainly compared with other countries. And I think, interestingly, in turn, that sort of deadened us to life. Like, we don't realize how secure and stable and prosperous we are. And when we don't see the alternative, it actually makes us appreciate life less. But yes, I mean, I think here in the United States with the happiness rating going down, who is surprised by this? I mean, right now we are educated to be miserable. We're educated to hate our country. We're educated to, think that things like the nuclear family are so defective and horrible. We're educated to think that everything is patriarchal and heteronormative and cisgender heteronormative. Like, everything is what's wrong.
And to define yourself as a victim.
Yes.
Give yourself labels.
Oh, you guys, you have to stay tuned for the Yuri Bezmenov piece, because one of the things of ideological subversion of the Soviet Union's goals was literally victimization. You'll see it on the chart. They wanted us to think of ourselves as victims, because when you think of yourself as a victim, you are a more deadened person, You are a diminished person when you are wallowing in victimhood. But this is really important. We have been raised to be miserable because we think that being miserable is like a sign of authenticity, and that's BS. So yeah, that's that. Let's. try
it's
to...
also the easy thing. It's the default. It's easy to be bitter. It's easy to be angry. It's hard to be happy and pleasurable and nice to be around and accommodating.
Well, I think I'll say one final thing about this. You're totally right about the ease. I also think that we view happiness as a kind of unnatural thing when it is quite natural. Unhappiness is not a bug in life. It's a feature of life. And I think we've lost our sense of that. Many of us think that we're entitled to be happy. We should endeavor to be happy. We shouldn't try to be, miserable. But Abigail Shrier was talking about this on her interview with Barry Weiss about Abigail's new book about therapy. And Abigail Shrier in her book writes about her grandmother who had an iron lung. She was a very sickly woman. Her grandmother's mother died in childbirth, giving birth to her grandmother. So Abigail Shrier describes her grandmother as this woman with all of these disadvantages. And yet, Abigail Shrier says, she was so happy. She was one of the most happy and resilient people that Abigail says she ever knew. And Barry Weiss said, why do you think that is? And Abigail Shrier's answer was, she didn't think that she was entitled to be happy. She thought that unhappiness was the norm, was the status quo in life. And hardship and difficulty and challenges and things going wrong was the status quo. And Abigail Shrier said her grandmother just had this worldview of when happiness did come, when you were lucky enough to have contentment or a good day, you appreciated that and you held on to that instead of thinking that you were entitled to it all the time.
I think you'll find this even more amazing because you don't have an iron lung. It's not like your lung is iron. An iron lung is a giant apparatus that you have to stay inside that helps you breathe.
Really?
If I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
So that makes it all the more impressive.
Oh, no. The way she describes her grandmother, I mean, and the challenges this woman encountered, it's unbelievable. We'll have to look that up. I'm curious about that. So just quickly, honestly, I was planning on having a longer discussion about this, but I just want to do it really fast to get onto the Yuri Bezmenov stuff. But there's this article I just want to call to your attention in the New York Times. I have my cutout here. This is what I do every morning. I get the New York Times and Wall Street Journal delivered to my apartment. I'm the only one in my building who has that. And they think I'm a little kooky. And then I read it and I cut them out and I file them because just reading hard copy is so much better than online.
Old ladies cut coupons. You cut articles.
I cut coupons too.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Hey, you can laugh, but when I get $5 off at Gelson's, I'm loving my life. No, seriously though. Hey, when something comes up, you laugh at me and my methods. When something comes up, I have these folders: economy, gender/trans agenda, border, elections, China. I have like 20 of these. When something comes up, I go boop. Pick out my folder, and I have articles from the past 3 years cut out to tell people about. But this is really interesting. The headline is, after the October 7th attacks, Israelis are becoming more politically conservative. And the article details how many, I'll just read you a quick stat. According to Israel Channel 4, a third of Israelis said that they are moving, quote, to the right in the month after October 7th. And gun ownership has gone up in Israel. There's been more support of the military. There's a quote from an individual, Maya Mizrahi, in the article who says that being a leftist has become a dirty word in Israel, and that she says that many people in Israel do not protest the military at all. She says, quote, many Israelis want more government welfare programs, but a conservative political leadership. And so just something to kind of think about.
I think it's
That's not shocking.
Things have slid so far to the left that if you just stand still, you move to the right.
So true. Well said.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very well said. Well, I talk about this a lot. I'm proud to say that I'm conservative because I want to conserve the principles of the American founding. That is what animates me. I want to get as close to that as possible. But frankly, is what I believe really that conservative? I'm pro-police. I'm pro-free speech. I'm pro having border control. Like, is that conservative, wanting a border for your country that is well regulated, having police protecting you, punishing criminals? Like, there are some things that are truly conservative beliefs. Being pro-life is definitely conservative. Being even some immigration stuff, can be divided between liberal and conservative. Some people think we should grant more amnesty, give more citizenship. Yeah, there are some views that are conservative, but right now, what conservatives believe is really just common sense. And at least in my view, not so much conservatism. But so there's that example in Israel. Just quickly, here are 3 recent things in the news. The first is that Oregon is reversing some of its policies on drug decriminalization. They decriminalized in the aftermath of the 2020 BLM stuff. They decriminalized a lot of drugs, and overdoses have skyrocketed. Homelessness has skyrocketed. So they're pulling back on that. Another example is in Georgia, also in the aftermath of the 2020 BLM crazy moment. They eliminated cash bail for several crimes, and now Georgia endeavors to reinstate cash bail for many of those crimes, including domestic violence. And then the third example is that people in San Francisco recently voted on 3 measures pertaining to drugs and crime, very similar things as in Oregon and in Georgia. And there are all these headlines like, San Francisco becoming conservative. When, again, really, I just think they're realizing, defunding the police doesn't work, and not punishing people for bad actions doesn't work. We ought to, go back to doing that again. But it's just...
I gave you that other one you can add to that list. In California, they revoked the conservative, or the travel ban. Remember I told you about that? They passed a travel ban that you couldn't, as a government worker, travel to an unfriendly LGBTQ state.
Oh, yeah, you did tell me that,
and they revoked it. You should add that to your bag of coupons.
Mm-hmm. Someone writes, I'm a liberal, but I love timeless. Thank you. I'm so delighted to hear that. That may be my favorite comment I've ever gotten. I don't want this to just be a show for conservatives. Yes, I'm politically conservative, proudly so, but this is a common sense show. And also, as you're going to see later, it's really, in many cases, a non-political show. I like talking about life, but I'm so happy for that comment. I want everybody of all different political beliefs to feel safe and seen and heard and comfortable in Timeless. But just interesting trends about conservatism. I think a lot of people, when stuff gets bad, cling to conservatism, cling to conservative principles. And with respect to those individuals, I wish that they would advocate for them even when they're not in danger. I don't love this idea that you can be reckless with advocating for crazy things. Certainly in Oregon and Georgia are the prime examples. And then when you're in danger, you go, actually, I like police again. I like standards again. I'm not so impressed with that, but anyway, let's talk about MyPillow before we talk about Yuri Bezmenov, shall we? I use a lot of MyPillow products. I sleep on a MyPillow. I use the Giza Dream bed sheets. I use my towels, and I wear my slippers. And you can get a lot of these products at a discount if you use the promo code Hartman or call 1-800-566-6745. Now, I mentioned the Giza Dream bed sheets. They have their lowest prices in history right now. You can get a queen size for $59.98 and a king size for $69.98. Just go to mypillow.com or call 1-800-566-6745 and use the promo code Hartman. Again, queen size $59.98, king size $69.98. You'll also get 60% off of the My Slippers. Just go to mypillow.com, call 1-800-566-6745, or use the promo code Hartman with one N and no E, as Sean McConnell always says. Just looking at the chat here. Wow, a lot of people are commenting about this happiness thing. Finland, very little sunlight, long dark days, very depressing. Yeah, I wonder why people are so happy there then. But here's another component. During my graduation, we had the then Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, the woman who said, if you don't hear it from the government, it's not the truth. She was my commencement speaker. And basically the whole speech was her just lecturing to us about all of the things that New Zealand has done right that the United States has done wrong. She was like, we decriminalized abortion. And everyone in Harvard Yard was like, oh my gosh, yes, New Zealand's so great. And then she was talking about the buyback program of guns. And everyone, when she was talking about that in the yard, was going, oh my God, you're so great. And here's what I was doing. I was sitting there going, wait a minute. First of all, like putting my policy positions on those two things aside, New Zealand is an island country of 5 million people, overwhelmingly ethnically homogenous, doesn't have borders, like you can't compare what works for you in New Zealand with the United States, which is the most ethnically, racially, religiously, and certainly genderly diverse country in the history of the world. We have a northern and southern border. The southern border obviously is the source of a lot of immigration issues. We have a country of 350 million people as compared with 5 million. Like, you just can't compare it. So I think when people go, oh, people are so much happier in Finland, it's a totally different reality over there. Also, different challenges.
We have bears, and cougars, and snakes. Do you know there are no predators on the island? No, but on New Zealand, there are no predators. The most vicious animal in New Zealand is the possum.
I have no idea why you know this, but I'm happy that you do.
Maybe another day. You know how you watch Real Housewives to relax?
Yes, I do know that
I watch camping videos on YouTube. I watch people camp, and one of my favorite campers is Tony and his dog Bruce, or now Bruno, AB Camping, and he camps all over New Zealand. And people ask him, do you ever get scared? And he says, no, I never get scared because there's nothing to be scared of. There's no predators. That makes a big deal when you're camping.
That does, yeah. I don't know if it's so determining of our happiness, but I glad to know it. That's actually really cool because I fear predators. I don't camp for many reasons besides predators, but I can blame it right now on fear of predators. Camping is just so oh my God, like how do you shower? Anyway, we're not talking about that. We're going to talk about Yuri Bezmenov. Although I can see that Sean wants to cut in. But this is so interesting and eerie. So Yuri Bezmenov was a KGB operative in the Soviet Union who then left the Soviet Union and defected to Canada in 1970. He was born in 1939. He died shortly after the fall of the Soviet Union in 1933. And when he defected to the West, and specifically moved to Canada, he exposed what he calls the 4 steps of ideological subversion. And this was a campaign that the Soviet Union devised and implemented to do just that, to ideologically subvert and undermine the United States. And we in America are so unaware of this happening to us. Frankly, we were unaware of it then, and we are staggeringly unaware of it now. To the extent that we're aware of it now, we don't care, which is another whole can of worms, which, by the way, shows that this campaign has been so successful, because part of this campaign is that when you realize that this is happening to you, you're so jaded that it doesn't really matter to you. But I want to go through these 4 steps and show you what Yuri Bezmenov was talking about, because it is, you can't imagine how eerie it is and how much it shows what's going on right now in the United States. But first, Yuri Bezmenov talks about how he was engaged not so much in espionage, but something which he says is far more unpleasant, ideological subversion. And he says, quote, "This is seldom explained to people by your media because the media is part of the process." And that's why when you hear this whole idea of ideological subversion, I think there's this American instinct to be like, what? That's so crazy. We have a free and independent press here in the United States. We're America. We're the titan in the world. We can't be ideologically subverted by any country. But he's saying, no, the media is a part of the process, which is why you aren't so aware that it's happening. And so he said that in the Soviet Union, about 15% of these projects were funneled towards plans of espionage, to send spies into the United States, gather data, sort of like hardcore infiltration. But then he says that 85% of their efforts were in this category of ideological subversion or psychological warfare. And here's how he defines it. See if it sounds familiar. I have a feeling it will be eerily familiar. Quote, what it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite an abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. I feel like that describes I don't know, maybe 80% of people I've met. You encounter certain individuals, and this is really not said in a mean way. It's said perhaps in a judgmental way, but not in a mean way. But I will encounter people who are so brainwashed, and it is amazing how much information you can give them, and it will not undermine the brainwash. You can go to someone and talk to them about these, for instance, cash bail policies, and go, there's really a lot of evidence that they don't work and they lead to total bloodshed. Here on Timeless, we discussed this crazy story in Long Island where 4 people murdered 2 people, hacked up the body parts, dispersed the body parts. A girl walking to school happened upon a severed arm in front of her. And that's how this whole thing got discovered. And these individuals, they may have been charged with murder by now. I don't know. This was a week ago. But 2 to 3 weeks after these crimes, they were not charged with murder. They were charged with dismembering body parts and, concealment of a corpse. And remarkably, they were let off on supervised, what do they call it? Supervised release, because what they were charged with, dismembering body parts and, dispersing a corpse, those were not cash bail eligible policy or crimes under the New York State's new cash bail policies. And literally the DA of Long Island said, we cannot bring forth, my prosecutors can't keep them in jail because these crimes that they've been charged with are not cash bail eligible. It's crazy. Anyway, you can bring examples like that, which are so obviously insane and inhumane, and you can bring them to people and they'll still go well, I love the well. You always hear the well thing. Well, that may be one example, but there are other people who are kept in jail because of cash bail, and it's so unfair, and it's so white privilege. It's they literally are so brainwashed that they cannot see, no, there are dismembered body parts. People are dying. You can't understand that people are dying and murderers need to have to put up bail as a financial incentive to go back to their trial. You can't get that. You can't get that it is just untenable with our resources and with our laws to allow 7 million legal immigrants to come into this country. You can't get that Democrats are using this in order to get more votes so as to have them counted in the census so that more, electoral college representatives will be allocated to blue states. You can't get this. And people, you see them in that brainwash. And this is what Yuri Bezmenov is talking about. So let's look here at a picture. I see that Sean wants to cut in. Yes.
Leo? I was going to throw up the picture of Don Lemon being confused,
well,
I thought it fit perfectly for what you were talking about.
Well, I actually have that video. Can we play that video? This is yeah. That's the what face? Yeah, let's play that video. This is from the interview a few days ago. We have it.
We made the special shot there. Yes, we do have it, but it takes a second to get it, and so I'm going to keep stalling while Alejo gets it. Go for it.
When the census is done, the census is based on all people in an area, whether they are citizens or not. So if there are a concentration of people who came here illegally in a particular state or in a particular state, that state will actually then get an increased number of House seats. So the House seat apportionment is proportionate to the number of people, not the number of citizens. This also applies to electing the president, because the electoral votes are also done by apportionment the same way that House seats are done.
But the reason, Elon, the Electoral College is in place is to balance that, is so that doesn't happen. So what you're saying about it is the exact opposite of the reason why the Electoral College is there. The Electoral College at this point, in our history, gives people who are in smaller states and red states much more of an influence over our elections than people who are in blue states, and the majority of the people in this country. That's what the Electoral College does. It actually does the exact opposite of what you're saying. It protects people who are in smaller states and protects people who are in red states.
Well,
the red states, because they tend to be smaller and less popular.
Okay, so what's going on here is that Don Lemon is not understanding, or maybe he's feigning to not understand, Elon Musk's point. And he's right when he's talking about the Electoral College, which is designed to give representation to smaller, less populous states. He's actually right about that, but that is not the point. The point is that Elon Musk is saying that this illegal immigration, well, I'm calling it a crisis, is this whole scheme, illegal immigration scheme, is being used to increase Electoral College seats for blue states. And again, Don Lemon is either not understanding or feigning not to understand and, ignoring his point.
I'm having an aha moment. I think I've stumbled onto something, and I don't know if it involves left and right, but it seems to me in this world there are a couple kinds of people like yourself, like myself, like Mr. Prager, who seeks clarity over agreement. You see truth. You effort to see truth. There are people who see what they want to see and then make that the truth. And those are the people that you're calling brainwashed, who can't understand facts when you put it up in front of their face.
Absolutely. A lot of it is they see what they want to see. But I think a supplementary part of this is that they're being encouraged and educated to see what they want to see. Human beings have proclivities to not see the truth and see what they want to see. But the role of society and education used to be, no, let's orient us closer to the truth. But now it's indulging our impulses.
Society, education, and the algorithm. Your algorithm feeds you what you watch. You don't see the other side.
Right.
It doesn't pop up in your feed.
Yep. Well, that's by design. So again, Don Lemon is just classic example of just not being presented with the fact and the facts and just not understanding. So let's look here at this chart. The 4 steps of ideological subversion. So this is allegedly from Yuri Bezmenov in the 1980s, from a 1980 video. I got this chart from Unintended Consequences. Their website has a big spread on Yuri Bezmenov in this. But this is either Yuri Bezmenov's summary of the 4 steps of ideological subversion, or Yuri Bezmenov literally got it when he was in the KGB from the Soviet Union. Unclear, but this is from Yuri Bezmenov. So the first step, just to quickly summarize the 4 steps, the first step is demoralization. And he says that it takes between 15 to 20 years. And demoralization is essentially demoralizing us, and not just in the sense of making us jaded, but literally unraveling our sense of morality and our ability to distinguish between good and evil and right and wrong. Like decoding, unraveling the moralization of society. And so this is done through, the media, through teachers and educators, becoming sympathetic, according to Unintended Consequences, to the causes of subverting a nation. This is how they put it. Basically, teachers in the media no longer being pro-American, but being sympathetic to communism. Sounds familiar. Being sympathetic to regimes who hate the United States also sounds familiar. And according to Unintended Consequences, Yuri Bezmenov said that the Soviet Union was surprised as to how easy it was to achieve this demoralization. So demoralization, step 1 for 15 to 20 years. Step 2 is what they call destabilization, where they target the countries, again, according to Unintended Consequences, it summarizes all of this, They target the country's, quote, foreign relations, defense, and economy to try to destabilize those entities. And we're seeing it now, that we are massively in debt. Many of our military, for instance, is incredibly woke. I've done shows here where I talk about the new speech codes in parts of the military, which discourage people from using terms like sergeant because it's offensive to those who aren't sergeants, discouraging people to use gendered terms. There's been a massive destabilization of our entities here in the United States. And part of that is self-inflicted, but another part of it is this ideological subversion. Step 3 is crisis, where there's 6 weeks, roughly, they say, of some big event that really marks a turning point in our way of life. And then step 4 is normalization, where the new status quo, whatever that is, perhaps even military intervention, is happening and accepted. But the main step to get people there is demoralization. And by the way, this is from the Soviet Union. By the time Yuri Bezmenov in the 1980s was exposing this, the demoralization process was already underway, and some say was already finished.
You're making me think that event could have been George Floyd and the BLM riots, and the intervention was the COVID lockdowns.
Yep. No, it's a very astute point. You're right. It's hard to tell if that's already happened or if even something greater may happen. Boy, do I hope not. But I just want to show you this chart again because let's look at the demoralization process. It is it's hard to see, but I have it here. The words they use. So the targeted areas they say are religion, education, media, and culture. And then they have this methods section, which is right in the middle. And look at what they say. Politicize things. And they have also permissiveness, relativity as one of their stated methods. That is so true. Right now we have this moral relativity infecting our nation where we don't judge good and evil. We judge oppressor versus oppressed. We judge, power structures, whiteness, heteronormativity. That is relativity. Also, according to the methods, it says manipulate, discredit. Totally. Look at religion, for instance. That's been manipulated. That's been discredited. Culture's been manipulated and discredited. Education, they also cite, has been manipulated and discredited. It's right here in front of us. And then they have results. This is what they hope happens. Ignorance. Check. Uninformed myopia. Check. Myopia, I should say, myopia. Uninformed myopia. Yes, you have this one, kind of laser view of things, right? And you are uninformed with that opinion, and you are unable to go outside of the boundaries of that one opinion. And then the other thing they say is addictive fads. Interesting. I would say drugs, certainly one of those. Frankly, this whole gender stuff, TikTok, absolutely. TikTok, yes. But my gosh, I'll show you another part of the results category just quickly and look this up online. Unintended consequences, again, is where I got it. And you can look at the chart. Results. Mistrust justice. I mistrust justice. Don't you, Sean?
Yep.
Look at what's going on to Donald Trump.
Government.
Elections, totally. Look at the 6 pro-lifers who are facing 10.5 years in prison for trespassing on an abortion clinic, which was against the law, yes, but worthy of 10.5 years in prison. That's insane. I don't trust justice. How about this one? Less individual response. Yes, when acts of misjustice or injustice, happen, we don't respond appropriately. Defenselessness. Check. Disunity. My God. Probably the biggest thing we have. And then isolation. They've done it. They've really done it. Sun Tzu was that 5th century BC writer in China, and he published The Art of War, which is like the war manual, not just for those in China, but all around the world. And his first article of the rules of warfare is subdue the enemy without fighting them. Now, we in the United States, it's just, and disagree with me in the chat. If you do disagree with me, Sean, cut in if you think I'm wrong about this. But my understanding and my perception of the United States is like we think of warfare in very conventional terms. I barely hear discussions, for instance, about this idea of psychological warfare or apropos of Sun Tzu, subduing the enemy without fighting them. We don't understand that this is happening to us. And that's part of their design. They don't want us to understand that it's happening to us. But I mean, China has done this spectacularly well. I mean, this is Yuri Bezmenov's Soviet Union for steps to ideological subversion. But this is basically like the CCP strategy, spying on us, TikTok, confusing our minds, spreading misinformation. I mean, TikTok is giving kids twitches. Literally, people are watching TikTok and they're getting these like facial twitches and they're getting Tourette's because they are watching people who have them and they're inheriting them. Like, can you imagine? I mean, this is so insane. We literally have our biggest adversary in charge of this app. All of these Americans are using this app and it is a disaster. They're becoming radicalized. They're twitching and we don't care. We know it's happening and we don't care. That is the mark of the amazing success of this campaign.
It's the same thing with pornography. Not that China's behind
pornography.
Yeah,
I saw someone is saying pornography, yeah.
But, I mean, what is it, a multi-billion-dollar business? It might be the majority
it's like
of
a third of the
on
internet.
The internet, and we all just... It's like it doesn't exist.
Well, what I'm about to say to so many sounds like a conspiracy theory, but it's not. Why is pornography so rampant in the United States, but communist China doesn't allow pornography? By the way, why is all of this gender confusion so prominent in the United States, but communist China, supposedly the haven of leftism, doesn't get more left than communism, right? They don't allow people to be gay or lesbian or trans. And I think that's despicable. Of course, you should allow people to love whoever they want. If if people are above the age of 18, I think you should be allowed to get, surgeries if you want to change your body, change your pronouns. People can do whatever they want as long as they're adults. I'm not endorsing what the Chinese Communist Party does, but what I'm saying is it's worth noticing that they don't allow things in their own country that they try to spread here because they know that it confuses and undermines and deadens us. I had Ken Gronbach on this show, who's a demographer, and we were talking about demographic trends. And he was saying that one of the biggest things that has contributed to demographic collapse in the West is pornography. Because people are satiating their sexual desires on their own. They're not going out and getting married, And he said also in turn, weirdly, pornography has made abortion more common, just sort of with like the lessening of sexual rules. But
it fits that isolation thing on Bezmenov's rundown.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's also, think about it in terms of a population. China, they're smart. They know what pornography is doing to us. China is experiencing its own demographic problem right now because of the one-child policy, and they hope that in the United States we will have similar issues where we will be so isolated, so addicted to porn, so jaded, so disunified that we won't want to procreate and build a robust country. So yeah, all things to consider, but I just want to show one final video. Once you learn about this like demoralization campaign of the Soviet Union, you turn everywhere and see it. This is a clip like from a few days ago of a Michael Knowles speech. Watch the person who's trying to get Michael Knowles.
Well, the baby is not an organ of hers. A baby is an individual human being.
About your internal organs, but a living, breathing woman does not.
Well,
okay, I understand.
No, I don't think you do understand because... I don't think you understand very well at all, unfortunately, because you're suggesting that the baby is an organ of the woman, which is preposterous, obviously. The baby is differentiated from organs by its DNA, by how it will develop, by, I don't think she's listening to the rest of my answer. Matt!
She calls him that. It's like the one funny part of the speech. Yeah. No, but
that happened today. That same tactic happened today on Capitol Hill with AOC. Hunter Biden's ex-business partner was being grilled, and she goes on for 2 minutes going, "Did you see Joe Biden do anything illegal?" And he tries to, "Did you see Joe Biden do anything illegal? Did you?" Like 20 times, and then she goes, "No, you didn't. I yield my time."
That literally demoralization 101. And that person in the video not understanding. You can be pro-choice, like I understand. I may not agree with them, people who are pro-choice, but to not understand that a baby is not an organ, a fetus is not an organ. Like, look at what he said. We want to get to a place where, despite an abundance of facts, people cannot draw sensible conclusions. They've achieved that. And the final thing I'll say on this is that what I wish, forgive me for making a generalization about these individuals, but what I wish blue-haired, like nose-ringed, super lefty, angry, TikTok, cat-loving liberals would understand is that they are the CCP and the Soviet Union's greatest dream come true. They may know that and they may not care. But I just want to say to people who are so brainwashed and are so advocating for these irresponsible things and hate the United States of America, even though they continue to live in the United States of America and reap the benefits of our system, what I wish I would say to them is, congratulations, sweetheart. You are our enemy's greatest dream. They could not have devised a better advocate for their evil than you. Mazel tov. What? You're laughing.
No, I'm ready for tattoos.
Yeah, let's go on to tattoos.
Bring on the tattoos.
By the way, oh my gosh, I just want to quickly say, when I just said Mazel Tov, I know the kinds of emails I'm going to get. People are going to say I was saying that these liberals are Jewish. I've seen all of this stuff online where people are thinking that people dog whistle about Jews. That's not what I intended to say. I love using the terms shalom and Mazel Tov just commonly, but it's hard when you see those internet trolls. They do get in your head and they make you convinced that you're doing, you said something wrong or bad. Anyway, that's not what I was intending to do. Let's talk about tattoos though. So if you want to call in, talk about tattoos, what is our number? 844-861-5537, 844-861-5537. You can also use the chat. I've got it right here and we will be monitoring. So a few facts about tattoos, and then just some discussion of how the trends have changed. Now, we have many people in the control room right now besides Sean, and several of them have tattoos. And before the show, we were chatting, I was asking, why did you get them? Do you like them? And a lot of what our dear producers were saying was in accordance with what I've read online, but I'm eager to hear your thoughts in the chat. So first, this is according to Pew Ipsos, I call it now Ipsos, a variety.
It goes well with creamed court.
Yeah, creamed court. That's what I called the Supreme Court yesterday. So, yes, a variety of sources I've gotten these facts from. But basically, the tattoo industry is a $50 billion worldwide industry right now. 30% of the U.S. population and 30% of the UK population right now in 2024 have tattoos. It's a lot. And by the way, that's up from 21% who had tattoos here in the United States in 2012. So there's been a big increase over the past decade. The other big increase that we saw was between the 1960s and the 1990s. It got popular then, and then it kind of remained stable, and then it got really popular from 2012 to now. As far as geographically here in the United States, it is remarkably evenly spread. I was looking at these charts of West, Midwest, North, South, East, different parts of the country and what share of the population has tattoos. And it was almost totally even. So it's very geographically even. Another thing too is that actually it's quite ideologically even. maybe tattoos are like the one thing that we can all agree on in this country. I always say that what liberals and conservatives have in common now is that we both spend a lot, like both Democrat and Republican Party have contributed hugely to the national debt. Maybe another thing I could add to that is that many people get tattoos. Women in the United States just became more likely than men to get tattoos. 31%, for instance, here of women versus 27% of men, which was not the case like a decade or two ago. It was more men than women had tattoos. 21% of tattooed women have 5 or more tattoos. They're addictive, as we will be talking about. And among tattooed people, about half have them that are very visible, and the other half have them in places that are more private and covered by the body. But just generally, it's become very common, very kind of evenly spread across different demographics. And I also forgot to mention, it is now pretty evenly spread across socioeconomic classes. It used to be that it was very common among working class individuals and a little bit scorned by those who were more wealthy. But now it's really pretty across the board common.
Not only that, it was seen as a sign of rebellion. I remember in college that I had a friend who was a girl who got a butterfly tattooed just above her tuchus.
Yeah.
And she thought she was so rebellious because she had this butterfly tattoo above her tuchus. And I remember thinking then, you're just like every other girl that got a butterfly above her tuchus. It's no longer rebellious. Like it was
rebellious.
It was rebellious to be on the left, and I think now it's rebellious among young kids to be conservative.
Yeah.
It's funny how the pendulum swings.
Totally.
And I don't mean to discount anyone with tattoos. Tattoos can be tastefully done. They can be beautiful works of art. They can be very personal. They can be, remembrances of family members or Bible phrases or things that you want to keep with you for life. I personally do not have any tattoos because my body is a temple.
I don't have tattoos because I'm just not cool enough. Like I couldn't rock them.
I could get a tattoo. I've just never thought of something that I want to have forever.
I've never wanted to. I've just never felt the urge to. I have really close friends who have lots of tattoos and they love them and they are addicted to them. I just have never felt that. But let's look at the, me, I was a history major. I love history. Let's look at the history of some tattooists here in the United States. The first known tattoo artist, famous tattoo artist in the United States was Martin Hildebrandt. He was a German immigrant to the United States. We have a picture of him, which you can put up. Yeah, he was tatted, that guy. And he actually was known for tattooing Civil War soldiers for identification purposes. And so what would happen is that a Civil War soldier would get their name tattooed on their body. So if they died in battle, their body could be identified and then sent back to their families. Also, those who fought in the Civil War would get other tattoos like flags, muskets, and cannons. It was kind of common to like be tatted in other ways if you were fighting in the Civil War. But isn't that interesting? And it makes sense, the need for identification. Another thing that we have now that came from the Civil War, or at least was made popular during the Civil War, embalmment. And I did a whole show on burial practices, how we've evolved cremating people because in many cemeteries there's not enough room to bury them, religious burial practices. Go watch that episode if you want to learn more. But during the Civil War, they needed to transport bodies from the battlefields to back home so that these soldiers could get a proper burial and be reunited with their families. And bodies, start to smell after really just a few hours of the person being dead. And so President Lincoln really focused his attention on finding people who were experimenting with embalmment. And then that's how it became really common in the United States because of the Civil War and the need to preserve bodies.
Yeah, it seems like, to bring it back to tattoos, because I don't want to talk about embalmment, In other cultures, the Pacific Islanders, Native Americans, parts of Africa, tattooing is religious and holy. And here it seems to be a form of self-expression.
Yeah. Well, it is. It definitely is a form of self-expression. But, yes, in other parts of the world, and for some, it's religious and holy. But there's also other examples of how it's really been kind of associated with fads, or like if someone influential did it, then a lot of other people would do it. For instance, I learned in England, King Edward VII got a tattoo before he was crowned. And then that caused this kind of like fad among the aristocracy of all these people getting tattooed like the king. But really, it was especially common, in addition to the Civil War, among soldiers and sailors especially. Like it was kind of customary to get a turtle if you sailed past the equator. There was a certain bird that you got tattooed on you in the 19th, 20th century if you traveled over 5,000 miles by ship. And also it was kind of a way to show where you've been. For instance, here's a photo of Tsar Nicholas II, who was the last Tsar in Russia before the Russian Empire became the Soviet Union. He went to Japan before he became a czar, and he got a big dragon tattoo on his arm, which apparently took like 7 hours to tattoo on him. He also, by the way, survived an assassination attempt in Japan, but he came back to Russia, and apparently, sort of like happened in England, a lot of people got dragon tattoos because they thought his was cool, and it was kind of a badge of honor for him that he had traveled to Japan. Another person who got a tattoo because of his travels was George Orwell, who was part of the colonial police in Burma. And he apparently got the really small dots tattooed on each knuckle, which apparently was sort of a superstitious sign of warding off bad spirits. But yeah, kind of interesting to think of George Orwell writing 1984 with the dots on his knuckles. So also just, talking generally about trends, the way that this has evolved. Yep, during the Civil War, people got identification tattoos. Interestingly, in the 1930s, when Social Security numbers were introduced to track people's earnings and see how much they were entitled to Social Security benefits, people got their Social Security numbers tattooed on themselves because they were too long to remember. I think that's brilliant. It's hard. I know mine, but it's hard to remember your Social Security number. So that's kind of makes sense. After World War II, it sort of became more popular. People who fought in World War II liked to get tattoos to symbolize in what division they fought, where they fought. But then in the 1960s, more inventive tattoos kind of came to the fore. And there's one guy who went by the name Sailor Jerry. His real name is Norman Collins. And I had never heard of him until I was doing this research. But then when I saw his tattoos, I was like, oh yeah, I've totally seen those on people. Classic, right? Here are more tattoos of his, but you can see that they are mostly, hearts or banners. I think we have another picture of his other tattoos. Yes, this. Skull and bones, sailors, anchors. He was big into the anchors. So those were pretty common. In the 1960s, there were only about 500 tattoo artists here in the United States. And then by the 1990s, that number went up to 10,000 tattoo artists. Now, I want you to guess, what do you think was the most popular tattoo, like ever in the United States? And to this day, the most popular. Yeah.
I know this is a total aside, but if you're watching on YouTube, we were just interrupted by a Joe Biden commercial asking for donations.
I have to tell you something. I go back to watch this show to see, like, if my hair is terrible and I need hair intervention, if the lighting, I will get Joe Biden commercials. And I'm like, what? Why on my clips? It's like.
So back to the tattoo. It's got to be the tramp stamp.
Please don't donate. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but please don't donate.
It's got to be the tramp stamp, right? The butterfly above the tuchus.
There's one.
Tell me that's the most popular.
No, there's one that actually comes ahead of that.
Really? Do tell.
Rose.
Oh.
And in all different iterations today, we still have it. Small, like micro tattoos, roses, the big ones, but the rose is the biggest. But in the 2000s, as Sean's anecdote very aptly reveals, it wasn't so much what your tattoo was, it was where your tattoo was. And lower back tattoos were very common in the 2000s. That was the big trend. So
rebels.
Yeah, so the placement changed, which is interesting because it used to just be really confined to arms, but people started experimenting with the back and the legs. So recently, there isn't a ton of evidence because obviously we're in the present, it's evolving, but recently I have noticed in my lifetime some differences in tattoo trends, especially among women. And namely, they are the prevalence of micro tattoos. So really small tattoos that usually will go on your forearm or maybe will go on a collarbone or somewhere, and they're tiny. This is a photo of one of she's not a Real Housewife, she's on Vanderpump Rules. Her name is Lala. I'm a reality TV junkie, so I see this all the time. But so many of the people on these reality TV shows, the women, have these micro tattoos. Here's one. She's from Salt Lake City, so she has the 801 Salt Lake City area code on her shoulder. Here is another Real Housewife, Kyle Richards. If there's someone in the chat who watches Real Housewives, I will love you forever. She has a heart micro tattoo. She also has another one that we're going to see now of Roman numerals. And these are so common. I'm telling you, I see them all the time.
I think these have evolved from prison culture. In prison, they do really crude tattoos. I mean, because they're locked up. What are they going to do? And they have, numbers and symbols and teardrops, and I think this has evolved from that.
It could
Perhaps.
be. It could be. I think it's a variety of things, but yeah, that may be part of it. Here's a celebrity tattooist, Dr. Wu. This is just a snapshot from his Instagram. He is hired by the stars to do tattoos, and look, he's remarkably talented. Look at that train one. First of all the details and the way that he makes it look like it has perspective, like it kind of goes back into the back. That's really cool. So there are some people who have tattoos that you may not expect them, that you wouldn't expect. You'd be kind of surprised. Andrew Jackson apparently was one of 6 suspected U.S. presidents who had a tattoo. It was alleged that he had a tomahawk tattoo. I don't think of U.S. presidents as being the most likely candidates for tattoos, but apparently several had them. Teddy Roosevelt was rumored to have his family crest on his chest. That rhymes. But here's someone who had a tattoo that totally shocked me. Winston Churchhill. He apparently had a pretty sizable anchor tattoo on his forearm because he was an officer in the British Army. That kind of both surprises me and doesn't surprise me. He had a kind of I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on YouTube, but whatever, badass side to him, or a kind of defiant side, because you think of him as this staunch traditionalist conservative, but it also doesn't surprise me that he would get a tattoo. He was always smoking a pipe, he gave the peace sign a lot.
His nickname was the Bulldog.
Yeah. Well, people speculate he may have had a bulldog tattoo, but I think that's a rumor. But the anchor one is pretty verified. Another staunch traditionalist, right, who would never get a tattoo because they're conservative, Barry Goldwater had a tattoo. And this was actually from, it was a symbol from the Smoky tribe, a Native American tribe in Barry Goldwater's home state of Arizona. Barry Goldwater was very interested in preserving Native American art and culture, especially in Arizona. And so the Smoky tribe apparently gave him or allowed him to have this tattoo, which is a really tiny tattoo, usually on the left hand between the thumb and the index finger, which has 4 dots in a half circle. So Barry Goldwater did have that. Here's one on the internet that may have been photoshopped, but people don't think it is. Caroline Kennedy. This is a picture from a speech that she gave at the Democratic National Convention in, I believe, 2008. Either 2008 or 2012. I think it was 2008. And apparently she has a little butterfly tattoo. People on the internet are rumoring that she got it on a family vacation. But sort of, she's not conservative, but I just wouldn't expect her to have a tattoo. But here's a final thing that is very interesting. There's actually a debate right now going on in the United States about the extent to which people can make rules about tattoos, employers, the government, etc. And so, as we know, private employers, less these days because of government intervention, but private employers theoretically can do whatever they want. They can have speech codes, they can, have DEI codes or not, they can have dress codes. But some people are saying that it's actually a violation of our First Amendment rights for things like police departments, for instance, to have laws against or guidelines against tattoos. So the Chicago Police Department, at least in 2015, had this policy where they mandated that police officers, if they have tattoos, not show their tattoos while they are on duty. They said this was to ensure professionalism and uniformity. And also in their guidelines, they said, quote, due to a tattoo's unique character, they fear that if they displayed a tattoo, it would, quote, undermine the Chicago Police Department's ability to maintain the public's trust and respect. That actually does make sense to me. If there's a symbol that indicates something that people disapprove of, or, it just, it's distracting. But there was this big lawsuit that it was violating people's First Amendment rights. People argue that tattoos are a form of expression, they're a form of speech, and maybe private employers can make provisions, but the police department or government entities aren't allowed to discriminate or suppress your First Amendment right. Which is interesting.
I can't believe you didn't show Mike Tyson's face tattoo or Post Malone or something.
But
we
know those people have those tattoos. I wanted to show things like, who knew that Winston Churchill had an anchor,
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, people are commenting. They have found tattoos on Egyptian mummies. Yes, very true. People are talking about other tattoos, various logos that they get. Yeah, I think the common through line, at least with people I've talked to, is that it has some kind of meaning to them and something that they feel accords with their identity.
Was that it?
I love it. I thought you were going to say something, but you just went.
I do. I have something.
Yeah.
Because I know through your discussions with Dennis and just working with you behind the scenes, I know how hard you are on yourself. You're very self-critical.
Who, me? No.
Yeah. And I just wanted to share with you that you're not alone in that. I, too, am self-critical. And I've been seeing this commercial for Amazon Prime on television. And every time I see it, it bothers me because I think this is how the world sees me.
Do you think you're that?
I do. I think that's how the world sees me.
No. Shanzi. Oh my God, you are so funny.
Come on!
This is what I have to deal with all the time.
I'm grumpy troll-esque.
We really should do a show on this, on self-doubt, self-criticism, and the way that you think others view you. Because I can tell you, I don't view you that way.
Oh, that's sweet. I had to take my glasses off just so you could see it, the similarity.
No, but really, like, it's so easy for us to get in our own heads. You've seen it, when I've been on the air, even this show, I want to clarify what I'm saying so that it's not construed this way. We also live in a very unforgiving culture where it's very easy for people to assume the worst in you. But someone wrote, "It is exactly how I see you." No, I knew it. I was going to read around that comment. It is not how I see you. And then I realized it was too late. Ian James, why are you commenting that? No, I'm kidding. Someone wrote the gentle giant. Yeah, that's Shanzi. The giant Gentile giant.
Gentle Gentile giant.
All right, whatever. Gentle Gentile giant. Tomato. I think that's a good note to end on. Thank you so much. This was so fun. You can email me at julie@julie-hartman.com with anything, thoughts, criticisms, suggestions, etc. And please tune in to Dennis and Julie this Sunday at 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern. Timeless is Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays at that same time. Take care, everyone. See you.